a bunch of different ways to start this video, but really it all boils down to one question. Can I actually locate and keep in my possession for one whole month my chill? And we all know the answer is probably not. I'm gonna give it my best try. And welcome back to another video. A video which is traditionally one of my favourite to film every month. There's just something shiny and hopeful about putting together a brand new TBR. All of the possibilities laid fresh before you. Nary a spine has been cracked. All of those pages just endlessly laid out. Who knows where we'll end up? And although traditionally me putting together a TBR has been a process of panic, because you know usually there's a readathon or a project or random spinners or polls involved, I do still always enjoy the process. I really do want to assure you of that because I know a few of you get worried about just how stressed I get, but this is the fun kind of stress, not the like chronic illness stress or the mental health stress, or I don't know, the world and my house are also falling apart, like those kinds of stress. However, there's always a caveat, right? A fly in the ointment. What the hell was that? Anyway, my dodgy insect impressions aside, the fly in the veritable ointment this time is that although there are a bunch of wonderful readathons going on this month, which I had lofty goals to participate in, although there is an actual stack, a whole stack, a stack big enough that it could sit on this desk and cover my face of books that I did have lined up for this month, we won't be doing any of those things. Because my brain is pulling the ripcord, you guys. It's unyanked it and we aren't even on the main parachute, we're on the emergency parachute. My brain said if we go any higher or any faster we are going to burn out, so we are just going to make a slow and meandering descent down to the softness of grass, okay? All of this to say, guys, that I have decided that May is going to be a slower month. There are going to be less books on my TBR for May than there have been for any other TBRs in the last, I don't know, 6 months, 8 months, living memory. I just need May to be a calmer month. And when I say calmer, when I say that there are less books on my TBR, that does not mean that we are mood reading, my friends. You know and I know that I cannot mood read for the life of me. It just results in me picking up multiple books and never finishing any of them, or being completely stuck and just so intimidated by what I should pick up next that I end up not reading at all. Seriously, the last time I mood read a 400-page book took me like 3 weeks, and we're not about that life anymore. No, instead of mood reading, I am instead in the background going to be working on a couple of separate vlog projects for May. The first of those vlog projects is one that I teased going into March. It is a new series that I want to start on my channel that I was filming so enthusiastically and so happily for, and I got desperately ill for the entire end of that month, and it has literally taken me all of April to get my body and brain back on track. So you will be seeing the start of that vlog project at some point during May, but I will also be working on a second vlog in May, and that vlog is going to be targeting one specific square on my bingo board from hell. If you're new here, hi, hello. This is the second year that I am working on a bingo board from hell project, which is my way of addressing all of the broken things about the way that I read. And what I have discovered so far about this year's board is that I was correct. I do have serious issues with rainy day books, with TBR veterans, and I know that I have serious issues with them because all of those squares make me want to pull out my hair. They make me want to never read again, which suggests to me that I need to tackle some of them a little bit more head on. Rip the band-aid off, so to speak. I'm not gonna lie, the little Scottish person inside me absolutely shrivels up when I call it a band-aid. She's just sitting there in her tartan being like, it's a plaster, it's a bloody plaster. So yes, I will be working on those two vlog projects for the majority of May, whether I like it or not. And one of them, for certain, me no likey. However, that does not mean that I will not be showing you books here today that are on my TBR for May, because I have 3 separate categories of books that I have a couple in each that I would like to show you guys, partially for accountability purposes and partially because I absolutely know I will be picking these ones up, unlike the books for my vlog projects, which I don't know about. I really don't. I don't know what books are going to come up for those, and I'm scared. So first of all, let's just talk about the books that I carried over from April, because there are a few of those. The first of those books is Dark Age by Pierce Brown. This is the 5th book in the Red Rising saga. Part of the second set of books in this series, I guess, because the first three really were like a closed out trilogy, and then the second set of books in this universe take place years and years later. You guys will probably recognise this book now because I have mentioned it in quite a few TBRs so far this year. I did have plans to read it in February and it fell off of my TBR, and I picked it up at the start of March, got really sick and couldn't concentrate on it because by this point in the series there are several different political factions. There are a lot of moving pieces to keep track of, and I was not feeling confident that I was understanding what was going on, and I didn't want to ruin the experience, so I put it down. And then finally I managed to finish all of my like currently reading or obligation books that were urgent for April, and so I picked this up right at the end. I am right halfway through. For those of you who read this series, I am on page 363, and look at the state of this. I don't break spines ever, not because I don't like the look of broken spines, because I have broken spines in the past and I actually do quite like the fact that they look well read. It's more from a I don't want the pages to come unglued and fall out or my paperbacks to fall apart point of view. But it is safe to say I have completely destroyed this book in the reading of it because I'm just like, what is going on? So as you can see from my tabs there, now that you know my tabbing method, if you've watched my how I doubled my reading in a year video, this is 100 page markers, so I have 400 pages left to go in this one and I will be finishing it off. I did receive Lightbringer in the post. Lightbringer's obviously been out for a year, but because I've been late to this series, I've decided that I'm only going to collect the paperbacks of these books, except for if there are special editions. So I now have a special edition of the first 3 books, and if Fairy Loot bring out special editions for the next books in this series, then I will pick those up also. I now have Lightbringer in my actual physical possession, so there's a chance that I might finish this and then need immediately to know what happens, and I might just carry straight on to Lightbringer. We'll see. You guys already know my synopsis for this one down pat, but I will say it again just in case you've been living under a rock or you're new to my channel. This series is a sci-fi series and we start from the point of view of Darrow, who is a miner under the surface of Mars. He is a red, which is the lowest colour cast in this system. As far as he's concerned, he's proud to be a red. He is proud to be mining under the surface of Mars because the substance that he and his people are mining is necessary to terraform the surface of Mars to move people away from a dying Earth. However, through some pretty brutal events at the beginning of Red Rising, we discover that actually Darrow and his people have been lied to. The surface has been terraformed for hundreds of years. There is an entire society living up there. And after a horrific incident that Darrow does not think that he is going to survive, a mysterious benefactor takes him to the surface and offers him the opportunity to infiltrate that society and to take it down from the inside. I literally cannot get over how much I love this series and how fast I have flown through it, which is another thing that I've actually realised about my reading in 2024, and that is that I very rarely, if ever, allow myself to just read through a series start to finish just because I've picked it up and I'm so enthusiastic about it. I just so rarely allow myself to do that. However, that does kind of neatly bring me on to another book, and it doesn't really belong in this section because I did actually finish the first book in its series in April. It does kind of lean into the point of I never just let myself read all the way through series just because. And that book is The Dream Thieves by Maggie Stiefvater, which is book 2 in the Raven Boys cycle. When I say that your girl is obsessed, when I say that every single cell in my body is like, I love them, they are precious and nobody must hurt them, I cannot emphasize it enough. I absolutely tore through my read of the Raven Boys and I immediately put a bookmark in this one and put it on my bedside table and then went, you shouldn't though, because you've got other things that you should be reading instead. Which is kind of just right back to my original point, right? So I am going to be picking up the second book in this series, The Dream Thieves, in May. And if I want to, if my body tells me that that is what we should do, I might just pick up book 3 and book 4 and read the whole freaking thing. So in case you have never heard of the Raven Boys before, we have the original Raven Boys quartet and then I think there's 3, follow-up books to this series following one character in a new cast. But The Raven Boys is about Blue. Blue comes from a family of psychics who can all variously do different things. Some of them can see the future, some of them read tarot cards, and they run a family business with a phone-in hotline and also a service where you can come in and have your future read. But on one day every year, their family goes to an old churchyard and watches a procession of the soon-to-be dead coming past. And this is part of their business. It is good for them to be able to predict when certain people aren't going to be there anymore in order to let them get their affairs in order. However, during this procession, Blue, who is not psychic herself, she is pretty much the only person in her family who isn't, finally sees a ghost for herself, the ghost of a boy named Gansey. And then we have the Raven Boys themselves, 4 boys who go to a very prestigious private school. Aglionby has the raven as its emblem, hence why they are called the Raven Boys, and they are all mostly privileged boys who are deeply, deeply broken. But Gansey is on a quest and he is dragging his 3 fellow Raven Boys along with him because Gansey has spent most of his teenage years hunting down ley lines because he believes that at the intersection of all of these ley lines lies a king who just needs to be woken up, and then that king will grant whoever wakes him up after his hundreds and hundreds of years worth of slumber one very special favour. Honestly, the title of this video is not the only Tortured Poet Department's reference that I could make here, because this book is filled with boys who just fit the definition of I can fix him, no really I can. So yeah, that series. I'll be carrying on with that series. And then finally, the last book that I am currently in the middle of and would like to finish in May is my reread of The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexander Dumas. But this one came about in a weird way. I was watching a TV show and the TV show kept referencing The Count of Monte Cristo and I was like, God, I haven't read that book in years. I love that book. And then I went looking for my copy. My copy was my original university copy. It looked exactly like this. It was this edition, but it was annotated to hell. And I suspect that's maybe the reason why I have unhauled it at some point down the line. I think it was just probably falling apart so much with all of me like opening it, writing on it, highlighting it, tabbing it. I did a lot of close work on this book when I was in university, so I think it just made its way out of my house at some point, but I was craving it. So on a trip to see a friend, I popped into a bookstore and I picked this one up. And as you can see, I picked it up almost immediately and I ate quite a big chunk of it very quickly. But as always happens, other books that were priorities for different projects got in the way, and so this one got put on the back burner. So in case you have just seen this book or heard the title of it but you don't know anything about what it's about, especially because although I do read a variety of books, like I read in almost every genre, I don't really talk a lot about classic books on my channel anymore, so you probably aren't really expecting to see this. This book is about a man called Edmund Dantes. He is a young sailor at the beginning of this book who thinks that his luck has finally come in. While he was on a voyage, the captain of his ship unfortunately died, and Edmund ended up being in charge of the ship for the rest of the voyage and coming back into port, and he did such a good job in that the person who owns the ship is like, cool, you're getting promoted, you can have the ship, this is yours now. And the prestige of that promotion plus the money that it gives him means that he will be able to look after his elderly ailing father and also marry the love of his life finally. However, on the day of that wedding, the police break into the wedding venue, they stop the wedding, and he is arrested and accused of treason, something that Edmund absolutely knows nothing about. He has absolutely no idea what's happening. Edmund is then thrown in a very famous jail, the Chateau d'Ilf, which is a prison on top of a little island, and there's literally no escape because below you is just hundreds of feet of cliff. But it is from that prison cell that Edmund starts to very slowly plot his revenge, and the rest of this book is just all of the slow and intricate details of Edmund planning and exacting his revenge. If I had to give you like a one-line summary of this, this is the original fuck around and find out book. So those are all of the books that I am currently reading and that I am carrying over into May. However, there are another couple of books that actually fell off of my TBR that I would like to get back on track with. The first of those is Nemesis by Agatha Christie, which is the second last Miss Marple book. This is not just a TBR veteran, but it is also a rainy day book because, as I said in last month's TBR, TBR, I have just been putting this off and off and off because I do not want this series to end. I do not want there to be no more Miss Marple books, but I do actually need to finish it. I do actually need to be able to say that that is a completed series, and I will finish off Miss Marple in May. And the other book which unfortunately fell off of my TBR in May is The Sinister Mystery of the Mesmerizing Girl, I think, which is the last book in the Athena Club trilogy by Theodora Goss. You will probably remember that in my tops and bottoms I did mention that the middle book in this series was too long. It was way too long. It was excellent. There were so many good things in that book, but it was too long, way too long, and it really left a bitter taste in my mouth because it didn't need to be that way, guys. It didn't need to be that way. It could just have been edited a little bit, and it didn't need to be that way. However, the third and final book in this trilogy is half the size of that. It's back to the size of the original book, so I need to finish that too. I also want that series to be off of my series tracker. Next time I give you my 6-month update on that, I would like that series to be gone. Again, if you have never heard about this series before, or you're new to my channel, because you would have to be new to my channel to have not heard me talk about this, the Athena Club series is a retelling of some of your absolute favourite classic horror novels. We start out with Mary, who is the daughter of Dr. Jekyll, but her father died many years ago in a mysterious incident with his business partner Mr. Hyde. Now Mary is destitute, she is penniless, and she is looking at losing her house, and she decides that the only thing that she can do really conceivably to get money is to try and track down Mr. Hyde, because there is a bounty on his head for her father's murder. However, in doing so, she finds other strange daughters that have been created by some very powerful men who you will find in classic horror novels. All of these daughters further their father's experiment in some way, but they are neglected and abused and often left with strange powers that they find difficult to fit into society with, and thus the Athena Club is born. And the trilogy follows the girls banding together, trying to live in this society with all of their weirdnesses, and their quest to bring down the society which all of their fathers belong to. This one has been a long time in coming, so I would really like to finish it in May. And then finally we have the books that I have to finish for other obligations. Not the books that I've put on my TBR, but the books that have been put on my TBR. And first up we have the very last ever book for this version of my book club over on Patreon. I run a variety book club over on my Patreon which is called the Seance Society, and previous to this we have been a variety book club which reads bi-monthly and picks 2 books from completely different genres to read together. However, my patrons, like many of us in the book world, we're struggling for a lot of different reasons. Some of us find prescriptive reading difficult. We desperately want to take part in book clubs. We desperately want to be talking about our favourite titles, but as soon as a book got picked as a title and then people had to read it, they immediately turned off and they didn't ever want to pick it up again. We picked both new releases and backlist titles, but for people who read from their library and don't already have that book on their shelves, that can be kind of tricky to get because new releases have long waiting lists and backlist titles might have less copies or just not be there at all. And then finally, lots of us are doing TBR projects. We're trying to bring our unread TBRs down, and if a book isn't already on our TBR and we're playing some sort of game or bingo, buying another book to read for a book club that you're not sure that you're gonna like is just not working. So in May, my book club is going to read one last book together, which I'll tell you about in a second, but then we are going to be starting a 6-month book club readathon. You guys know that my Patreon is based on the tiny little Scottish town of Lochfern, which is a little haunted town in the Scottish Highlands. There are lots of characters to meet in Lochfern when you get there. All of our readathons and our sprints are based around Lochfern and the characters who live there. And so from June onwards, there is going to be a readathon where you are going to be given a map of Lochfern, and for every different stop on the map there is going to be a different prompt where you're going to be able to read books from your own TBR to collect that location from the board. There will be 6 months left in the year, so there will initially be 6 locations available on the map. However, other bonus locations will open up for extra points because when we do readathons on my Patreon, they are all based around town events in Lochfern. Like, we've had the spring fair, the Christmas tree farm, there is the Halloween fun fair that comes around. So extra locations with bigger varieties of prompts will be available on those special months, and you'll only be able to collect that prompt in that month. We are so excited to change our book club to this model. Like, we are all absolutely buzzing for it. It's everything that we like about readathons with prompts and being able to read from your own TBR, but everything we like about book clubs, because for every month we will have a live show where we will all talk about the different books that we pick up for that particular prompt. So the last book that we're going to be picking up for our traditional book club format is A Botanical Daughter by Noah Medlock. And this one is one that I only recently picked up, so it will also count for my 60% square on my bingo board, which makes me very happy. This one is about two men in the Victorian era. One of them loves plants. He has a massive glass house where he collects exotic plants, and the other is a taxidermist. And together they kind of make a little experiment. They create a botanical daughter from some very exotic plants and with soil enriched by cadavers. However, they very quickly work out that plants cannot be reasoned with. This one is like a tongue-in-cheek spore horror, which is also queer, so we're very excited to read this one. The cover of it is absolutely stunning. It was definitely a cover buy for me. However, although our book club is not going to be operating like a traditional book club and picking new books every other month to read together, we are going to continue to read through some series together. So far we have read through the Dry series by Jane Harper, and we are finishing off the Diviners series in May. So the last book in the Diviners series is on my TBR for May, but also so is the second last book, because in April I did not manage to get to it. But I really didn't want to force myself to rush through the book and then not enjoy the experience of reading it, so I am officially behind on this, which is absolutely fine. But in May we will be picking our next series that we're going to read, and whatever series that is also going to be one book a month, so I really need to catch up in May because I don't want to trail on yet another series. So in case you've never heard of the Diviners series before, it is set in the 1920s in New York. We are following Evie Neal, who has the ability to pick up objects and see things about their owners. Sometimes those things are not things that their owners necessarily want everybody to know. Evie does this at a party and she literally implodes her small town, and her family have no choice but to send her away. The only place that they could possibly send her is to her uncle in New York, which Evie is absolutely fine with because she is obsessed with flapper society and the flapper movement. But she does not expect her uncle to be quite the person that he is, because her uncle owns and runs an occult museum in New York, and the day that Evie gets there, her uncle has a visit from the police who need him to come and help consult with them on a series of murders which have happened. And at the crime scene that Evie gets dragged along to, she does something that she will come to regret. She reaches out and touches something that belongs to the person who has just been murdered, and the things that she sees are unlike anything that she has ever seen before. I have read the first and second books in this series before, so books 1 and 2 were a reread for me, but books 3 and 4 are completely new for me. I never finished off this series, so I will hopefully finally be doing that in May. And then finally, my very last project commitment for May is of course Around the Disc in 800 Days. If you are new here, Around the Disc in 800 Days is a complete Terry Pratchett read along that I am running with my lovely friend Kirsty from Melbs Reads over on Bookstagram, and we are well into year 2 of this readathon, and thankfully we are now finally past some of the books in the Discworld that I like the least. The Industrial Revolution series and the like Making Money series and stuff like that, they're just not my favourites. However, in May we will be reading Monstrous Regiment, which is essentially Terry Pratchett takes on females in the military, and we will also be reading A Hatful of Sky, which is the second book in the Tiffany Aching series, which I am just so glad that we finally hit. I've been holding out for Tiffany Aching over these last few books. I am thoroughly psyched to be back in Tiffany's world. I am enjoying it so much. So again, if you missed the start of this readathon and you have been too intimidated to jump in at any point, I understand. We're in year 2 of a very long readathon. However, if you are considering starting out with Terry Pratchett, the Tiffany Aching books are a perfectly good place to start. They are some of the Discworld Nuts' absolute favourite books in the series. Discworld is split into lots of different sub-series, so you can technically start anywhere. If you do want to jump in with the readathon and read the Tiffany books with us, then please do. I'll leave a Discord invite down in my description box below. Come along and join us. We are having so much fun. That is it, guys. Those are all of the books that I am planning on reading in May. It seems like the shortest ever TBR that I have ever given you guys. I feel a little bit weird not giving you a longer list of books than this, but I guess we all need a little reading refresher now and then, and I hope that you will be pleasantly surprised with the vlog projects that I pull out for you guys in May. If you have got this far through the video, then leave me the footsteps emojis down below, or I don't know, the running or the walking emojis, because I really do feel like May is going to be a one step at a time sort of month. Pardon the pun. Actually, no, don't pardon the pun. I liked it. As always, please tell me what you are planning on reading in May. Specifically, tell me the first book that you are planning on picking up. The one that's at the top of your TBR that you have to prioritise or that you're very, very excited for. If you are new here and you would like to find out what my surprise vlog projects are going to be, then please hit that subscribe button down below. And if you are a returning subscriber, thank you so much for your support no matter how many books are on my TBR. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button on your way out because it really does help my channel, and I will speak to you guys really soon.